Instruction will not produce result until you obey. Instruction will not produce result until you obey. Some things will never happen until you obey. Great evening, guys. Thank you so much for joining us again on another exciting Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade. I am Mr. Upgrade, and I'm super excited to have you here join us again today. By the way, Happy New Year. Yes, welcome to 2025, your big things era activated. So, get ready to do big things in 2025 and get ready to see the continuation of the supernatural in your life this 2025. Okay, so previously we had left off the end of last year by talking about instruction, and this is more like the continuation of that conversation because instruction will not produce results until you obey. So, hence, we are having this conversation today on obey. You know, this is the Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade, and we do four things here, right? Number one, we take your questions. So, if you have questions whatsoever, feel free to ask your questions. We will gladly take them. So, we'll take your questions while we're here. Number two, we get to share with you the Upgrade Mastery tip for the week. And for this week, the Upgrade Mastery tip is obey. Very important. Obey, right? Number three is that we get to connect, network, and bond. So that's why we encourage you to let us know where you're joining us from so that we can appreciate you, so we can connect with you, and so we can share with you our special gift, especially if this is your first time of joining us. We have a special gift for you, right? Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you and we celebrate you. Another year for us and another year with you joining us to make this a possibility, right? So thank you so much for joining us. So the third thing we get to do, now we get to connect, network, and bond because we understand how important it is for connecting, networking, and bonding in our today's world. So we get to connect, network, and bond. And then the fourth thing that we get to do is that we got to have fun. Yes. I strongly believe that if learning is not fun, there is no learning at all. So we get to have fun while we do all that we do on the Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade. I am super excited. I don't know about you, but I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go for the session that we're going to have today. So do well to put some fire in the comment section so I know that you're here. And do well to also let us know where you're watching us from so we can know what part of the world you're connecting to us from across the world, right? You know, this is YouTube, so everybody can get to have access to YouTube across the world. So let us know where you're watching us from, right? We appreciate you. And if this is your first time of joining us, thank you. We're super glad to have you join us today. Let's get into the gist. Are you excited? Are you excited? Are you ready? I'm ready. I'm excited. So let's get the show on the road. You know, we do this. You know how we do. Now, on the Upgrade Live, Mr. Upgrade, we always begin with basic 5 questions. Now, these 5 questions help us to set the tone for the conversation. It helps us to lay the foundation upon which every other thing will be built upon, right? So, question number 1. What is obey? Right? You always hear people talk about you need to obey, you need to obey, you need to be obedient, you need to obey. What exactly is obey? Right? What does it mean to obey? Right, tell me, what do you think it means to obey? What do you think it means to obey? When you hear the word obey, what comes to your mind? You know, when we hear words, there's some meanings that actually come to our minds about that particular word, whether they are true or wrong, but we just have this meaning that's already attached to the word. So for the word obey, what meaning have you attached to it previously when you hear obey? What does it mean? Right? While I'm waiting for you to come up with those things that come to your mind, let me tell you what it is from the upgrade side of life. You know, for us here, we always have our unique definition to things. Right? From the upgrade side of life, obey, it means to comply with and follow instruction, no question asked. Now, when you say to obey, it means to comply with or follow no, or, and follow instruction, no question asked. That is obey. To comply and follow instruction, no question asked. That is obey. Which means when you obey, it means that you follow instruction, you comply to the instruction, you don't ask questions. You just do what you have been told to do. That's what it means to obey. Simply put, you do what you are told to do. That's what it means to obey. And by this definition, you will see that some people just don't know how to obey. Why? Because they want to ask questions, because they want to counter the suggestion or counter the instruction. They want to bring something else that they feel will be better. They don't just know how to obey, because to obey is to comply with and follow instruction. You know, the centurion says something very striking. He says, I'm a man over 100 soldiers. I tell them go and they go. I tell them come and they come. When he was telling Jesus, you don't need to come with me, just speak the word. Because for the centurion, his soldiers know how to obey. That's why you hear the slang about the military. They say obey the last command. Obey. To obey simply means to comply with and follow instruction. And you're going to see why it's important that people get to obey. Why it's very important. Question number 2. Who's responsible to obey? Who's responsible to obey? The answer is you. You are the one responsible to obey. The former anthem of the country, Nigeria, goes, Arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's call, obey. Right? It is your responsibility to obey. Your responsibility. You are the one responsible to obey. Whether you obey or not is entirely up to you. And also, there are consequences when you obey and consequences when you don't obey. You know, people always look at consequences from the negative. Consequences are also positive. Right? When you obey, there are things you stand to gain. When you don't obey, there are things you stand to lose. They are both consequences. So who's responsible to obey? You are responsible to obey. Don't worry, follow me closely. You're going to see scales fall off your eyes on this conversation. Number 3, why obey? Why do we have to obey? Why is this of any importance or any significance? Why obey? I'll tell you 3 reasons why obey. Number 1, to surrender. Number 2, to trust. And number 3, compliance. These are 3 reasons why obey. To obey shows that you have surrendered your will, your choice, your opinions to the instruction you have received. That's surrender. People who cannot surrender that cannot obey. You know, when Lot and his household were told to leave Sodom and Gomorrah, the instruction to them was that they should not look back. They should just go and don't look back. But Lot's wife, she looked back and she became a pillar of salt. To obey is to completely surrender. Surrender your will, surrender your opinion, surrender your choice, surrender all of those to follow the instruction, to comply with the instruction. So why obey? Number 1, to surrender. Number 2, to trust. You cannot obey when you don't have complete trust. That's why I remember that old hymn that says, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. So, to trust is why you obey. It shows you have complete trust. Complete trust. That's why you obey. Yes, complete trust. And number 3, compliance. You obey for compliance. We are not doing half and half, because you get to find out as we go on this journey that half obedience is equivalent to full disobedience. You see that in one of the stories we're going to use to explain later. Half obedience, which means you obey to a point and then you don't obey further, that is same as full disobedience. So to obey, why you obey is full compliance. To the letter, you dot the I's and cross the T's to the last. No questions asked. So 3 reasons why obey. 1, surrender. 2, trust. And 3, compliance. Question number 4. What are the benefits of obey? What are the benefits of obey? What do you stand to gain when you obey? What are the things you benefit when you obey? What are the benefits of obey? What are the benefits? I'll tell you 3 benefits, right? You've been with us for a while, you understand we always keep it 3 so that you can easily remember, right? 3 benefits of obey. Number 1 is results. When you obey, you always see results. Whether you see supernatural results or you see natural results, you always see results when you obey. There is no obedience that doesn't reward you. Reward in the form of results. Right? When you obey, there's always the result. Whether it's a supernatural result, whether it's a natural result, there's always the result from obedience. That's why it's important that you obey, because of the result it brings when you obey. So there's always result when you obey. Always result. Number 2, second benefit of obey is that there is growth. As you obey, you see that you are experiencing growth. You're becoming a better person, right? You're not who you used to be anymore. You are growing as you obey. You are understanding things better as you obey, right? So that's an important integral benefit of obey. Growth. You don't stay the same way when you obey. There's always a new level that is unlocked through growth. There's a new level that is unlocked through growth as you obey. The third thing that happens when you obey is that you have discipline. Third benefit is discipline. You see, it takes a lot of discipline to obey. It takes a lot of discipline. And that's why the people who you realize do not obey, they don't really have discipline in their lives. They have a lot of indiscipline in their life because they cannot obey. It takes discipline from you to obey. Take discipline. One of the hardest things for people to do is to obey because of the discipline that comes with obey. It's a discipline. If it was easy, everybody would obey. That's the truth. If it was easy, it was something that's easy to do, everybody would obey. But because there is the discipline that comes with obey, not many people can. Only the disciplined can, because it takes discipline to surrender. It takes discipline to trust. It takes discipline to have full compliance. So what obey does to you is that it disciplines you. The things you would have loved to do for yourself, because you obey, you no longer do it. That's discipline. Places you would have loved to go, because you obey, you no longer go there. That's discipline. So a benefit of obey is discipline. So you want to have more discipline in your life, look out for the instruction you are supposed to obey. Every year people say, okay, they are going to hit the gym, they're going to do better exercise and all of that. But it takes discipline to obey that you will do better for yourself. It takes discipline to continue to hit the gym when you don't even feel like hitting the gym. It takes discipline for you to do your exercises, to do your morning walks, to do your morning routines in terms of exercise. when you don't even feel like it, when you don't feel like getting off your bed. It takes discipline for you to stand up and do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel. That's what obey does for you. It gives you the discipline. Question number 5. When is the best time to obey? When is the best time to obey? The last best time to obey was yesterday. The next best time to obey is now. Now is the next best time to obey. Trust me. Whatever you've been told to do, especially now that you are in a new year, this is the best time to obey the instruction you have received for your year. You know, we shared last week, just in case you missed last week's conversation, please go back and watch it on instruction. That was the last conversation we had in 2024 on the Upgrade Live in Mr. Upgrade. Please go and watch it because it's a continuation of that conversation we're having this one, which is obey. Because instruction will not produce result until you obey. So we've given you instruction on how you need your instruction, why instruction is important for you. Now we're telling you to make the most of instruction. It starts when you obey. That's why we're having this conversation now on obey. And the best time to obey is now, not tomorrow, not sometime later in the year, but now. Because as you start to obey now, you start to see results physically and supernaturally. You start to grow, experience growth, and you start to stay disciplined because you obey. So the best time to obey is now. Now is the best time to obey. So these are our basic 5 questions, and I believe this has helped us to understand what we're going to be talking about now in obey. What we are going to be talking about as we talk about obey. Now, first things first, and be very certain with us. There is no substitute to obey. Let me begin with that. There is no substitute to obey, which means you either obey or you don't obey. There's no substitute to obey. Say, okay, because I can't obey, let me do this in its place. There is no substitute to obey. The only substitute to obey is to obey. So there's no substitute. There's no replacement. Say, okay, because I cannot obey this, I will not do this instead. No. There is no substitute to obey. The only substitute to obey is to obey. Are you getting this? So there's no substitute. The earlier you understand this, the better for you. You cannot replace obedience with something else. We're going to see scriptures later. You can't replace obedience with something else. There's no substitute to obey. It's obedience or none at all. Now let's look at obey itself. O-B-E-Y. Obey. 4-letter word, very key. The O in obey is opportunity. Now, you may be wondering, how does opportunity come into obey? It's very simple. There are some things that as you obey, it brings you into, it exposes you into. That is opportunity. The O in obey is opportunity. For every time you obey, you are bringing yourself to harness the opportunity that is in that obedience. There's always the opportunity tied to the obedience. And like I tell us all the time, an opportunity don't come but once. It comes every day. And the day you take advantage of your opportunity, that becomes your once. So guess what? To obey is you taking advantage of the opportunity that life has presented your way. You know, when Jesus was walking on water and Peter and the other disciples saw him, Peter asked, Lord, if it be you, bid me to come. Guess what? Jesus gave a blank check. Jesus did not say, Peter, come. Jesus said, come. Which means any other disciple could have also walked on water to meet Jesus. Any other disciple. How do I know this? When Jesus was going to bring Lazarus back from the dead, he didn't say, come forth. Because if he had said that, everyone who had been dead in that tomb would have come forth. He was specific. He said, Lazarus, come forth. But when Jesus was telling Peter to come, when he was walking on water, Jesus was not specific to Peter. He was making it open to all the disciples who could hear him and who were willing to obey. And he said, come. But only Peter stepped out of the boat and walked on water. The other disciples had the same opportunity to have walked on water, but they did not. See, when you obey, it unlocks an opportunity that has always been there for you that you could harness. So the thing about obey, first letter of obey, O, is opportunity. In the beginning of the new year, there are things you set out to do. As you obey, you are seeing opportunities being unraveled, released to you because you obey. This is why it's important that you obey. You are taking advantage of the opportunity that life has presented you as you obey. Because you see, when you obey, there's result. The B in obey is brave. To obey helps you to be brave. Regardless of the fears you may have, it helps you to be brave. When Peter stepped on water, when Jesus said, come, Peter was brave. Peter was brave. The other disciples could have, but they were not brave enough to step out. Peter was. In Peter's mind, as far as Jesus is here, he will not watch me die if anything goes wrong. And that's what happened. Even when he was sinking, Peter said, Lord, help me. And Jesus reached out to him and pulled him up. Peter was brave. To obey helps you to be brave. Helps you to be brave when you obey. Okay, don't just sit back and be timid. You know, don't sit back and be naive. Don't sit back and be afraid. You are brave when you obey. See this, guys. When Jesus told the servants, fetch the pots with water at the wedding of Cana in John chapter 2, and then he told them, draw from the pot that you have filled with water and go give to the master of ceremony. It took someone who is brave to be able to do that. Knowing that I fetched the water. This was water. I drew it out from the well. Let's say there was well at that time. I drew it out from the well myself. This is water. I filled it in the pot. This is water. I didn't add any chemicals or anything to mix it to make it turn wine. So this is literally water, I know. And I scooped from it in a cup. It is still water. I could see it. It is still water. And I'm taking it to the master of ceremony. That's someone who's brave. Obedience helps you to be brave. See, the truth is, someone who's not brave, it will be hard for the person to obey. That's just the truth. Someone who's not brave, it will be hard to obey. So the being obey is brave. You are not certain what the outcome may be, but you are brave to know that the outcome will be in your favor. You are brave. In Genesis 22, Abraham was told to go offer Isaac. They were days into the journey, and Isaac asked him, Father, we have the wood, we have the fire. Where's the ram? And Abraham said, the Lord will provide himself a ram, knowing fully well that Isaac was going to be the sacrifice. But Abraham was brave enough, knowing that God was able to bring Isaac back from the dead, even if he had killed him. See, to obey, you have to be brave. You have to be brave. God has told you in this year is a year of big things era, which means there are things that want to make you do small things. Circumstances and conditions want to make you do small things, but you have to be brave to obey and still do the big things you know you're supposed to do. You have to be brave. The E in obey is expressing. The one who obeys is expressing belief, is expressing trust, is expressing faith. Expressing. Is expressing. Abraham believed the God who quickeneth the dead and calleth those things that be not as though they were. Expressing. So the E in obey is expressing. So anyone who's obeying is expressing faith, is expressing hope, is expressing trust. I don't know how this will play out, but I'm certain it's to my advantage. That's expressing. Abraham was climbing up that mountain for days. Was climbing up that mountain for days. And guess what? The son asked him, Father, we have the wood, we have the fire. Where is the ram? And Abraham said, the Lord will provide himself a ram. He was expressing faith. He was expressing faith. Why do you think Abraham was known as the father of faith? Expressing. Expressing. As you obey, you are expressing. As you obey, you are expressing. The why in obey is you. Is you. You see, the same way you cannot substitute obey with anything else, nobody can obey for you. It has to be you. I love that. Nobody can obey for you. It has to be you. So if God gives you an instruction, nobody can obey that instruction for you. It has to be you. It has to be you. Are you getting this? Nobody can obey an instruction for you but you. But when it comes to obey, it's about you. It's about you, not somebody else. Yes, we are in this together, but there are specific instructions given to you that you must obey, regardless of the crowd, regardless of the people you are with. So the earlier you understand and realize this, the better for you. Knowing that, yes, the word may have been to everyone, but there's something specific for me to obey. Remember, we told you earlier that instruction is person specific. The same way obedience is person specific. What God has told you to do is for you and you alone. So to obey is you. It's for you. So guys, this is what obey. This is what obey is. Opportunity, brave, expressing you. So it could read opportunity to brave, for bravery, for bravely expressing you. Opportunity, brave, expressing you. This, my friend, is obey. The question is, are you ready to obey? Be ready to obey, because nobody will obey for you. So are you ready to obey? Are you ready to obey? And I think your answer should be yes. Your answer should be yes. Because if you want to move from point A to point B in your life, you have to obey the instruction that takes you from A to B. You have to obey. There's no other way out. You have to obey. You have to obey. Now, 3 things about obeying. 3 things about obeying. 3 things about obeying. Number 1, it's hard. If anyone tells you to obey is easy, the person probably is lying to you. I'll say that again. If anyone tells you to obey is easy, the person probably is lying to you. To obey is hard. To obey is hard. It's not easy. It's not easy. See, like I told you earlier, half obedience is full disobedience. Some people start off to obey, but because of how hard it is to obey, and because they don't yet have the discipline that comes from obey, they quit. And they return back to status quo. I say this all the time. January 1st, everybody's excited. Happy New Year, New Year resolution, New Year, new me, and all of that. Great. January 3rd, that euphoria, that excitement starts to wane, starts to die down gradually by January 3rd. Then by January 15th, people return back to status quo. All the New Year, new me goes in the trash. They return back to status quo by January 3rd, by January 15th. So you see, January 1st, you're all excited, all in the frenzy, all in the euphoria of the new year, new me, New Year resolution, all the goals they're going to do in the new year. Good. January 3rd, reality starts to kick in. People start to get back to reality. The euphoria starts to die down. January 15th, people are returning back to status quo. What they've been doing before, they'll just continue. After all, life goes on. To obey is hard. To obey is hard. To obey is hard. It's not easy. I remember last year, I got the instruction to stop sharing on WhatsApp status, stop commenting on Instagram posts and all of that, and to move the live videos from Instagram to YouTube. It was not easy, guys. It was hard. Knowing that you built a certain following on Instagram and all of that, it was hard. But we obeyed. We're here now. We obeyed. We obeyed. We're here now. So, 3 things about obeying. Number 1 is hard. And I tell this to people all the time. If you do what is hard, your life will be easy. And if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. Second thing about obey is that it's unconventional. Obey doesn't follow the conventional things that you are used to. It's not conventional. Obey is unconventional. It's so unconventional. It's not what you are used to. No, it's so unconventional. How do you tell a man, Abraham, to go offer up his son as a sacrifice? The same son he had waited for 25 years. And he said, in Genesis 22, he says, and God called unto Abraham, Abraham, take your son, your only son, the one whom thou love, and offer him as a sacrifice at the mount that I will show you. And Abraham took Isaac and they went on the journey. He did not even tell Sarah. He just went on the journey. To obey is unconventional. Not what you are used to. It's unconventional. That's why it's hard. How do you explain to someone to sacrifice his son? He had waited for 25 years. And you know, prior to that, what many people don't understand is that prior to that, in Genesis 21, God had given Abraham the instruction to let go of Hagar and Ishmael. Because when Sarah was saying, I'm not comfortable with the way Hagar and her son are behaving, I don't want them to share the inheritance with my son. And God told Abraham, don't get upset, don't get offended, send Hagar and her son away. And Abraham did. That's Genesis 21. In Genesis 22, God is saying, now Isaac, that is the only son that is left, now to offer him as a sacrifice. So based on conventional, guys. It's unconventional. It's not what you are used to. It's unconventional. But the third thing about obey is that it's always for your benefit. By the time Abraham was about to kill Isaac, God said, Abraham, stop. By this I know. By this I know. In blessing, I will bless you. In multiplication, I will multiply you. See, it is always for your benefit when you obey. It may not look like it immediately, but ultimately, it's always for your benefit. There's one thing for certain I know you can never lose in. You can never lose when you obey. You can never lose. It may look like you are losing right now because you obey, but you can never lose when you obey. You can never lose. That is certain. When you obey, you can never lose. That is certain. When you obey, you can never lose. So 3 things about obey. Number 1, it's hard. Number 2, it's unconventional. Number 3, it's for your benefit. There are 2 traits about obey. People who obey, anyone you observe that obey, you see these 2 traits about them. 2 traits about obey. They do it and now. Which means for the one who obey, they don't procrastinate. They don't rationalize. They don't say, okay, let me think about it. No. They do it and they do it now. In John chapter 2, verse 5, Mary said to the servants, whatsoever he tells you to do, do it. And Jesus looked at the servant and said, okay, go fill up the jars, the pots with water. There were 6 pots. They fill them up with water. They did it now. They said, okay, draw from the pot and go give to the master of ceremony. They did it now. So when it comes to obey, 2 traits you must watch out for anyone who obeys is that they do it and they do it now. You don't postpone it. You don't say, oh, I'll do it later. Oh, I'll do it when I feel better. No. They do it and they do it now. 2 traits for obey. That it is done and it is done now. There's no room to procrastinate. There's no room to postpone. There's no room for I will do it later. It's done and it's done now. So those are the 2 traits for anyone who obey. They do it and they do it now. Because obedience is time sensitive. We're going to show you in scripture. Obedience is time sensitive. When you miss the time, it's tantamount to disobedience. Obedience is time sensitive. The one goal of obedience is to trust regardless. That's the whole essence of obedience. To trust regardless. To trust regardless. That's the whole essence of obedience, to trust regardless of what others are thinking, regardless of what people may be saying, regardless of what is the convention. To trust regardless. That's the goal. The servants at the wedding of Cana, they trust regardless. See, you have no idea how that thing is difficult until you find yourself in such a situation where you're almost doing what is termed impossible and insane. We are out of wine. This is a wedding. Everybody is supposed to be drinking. And then you are telling us to go and fetch water. What it's saying is that you may be telling us, go and meet so and so and collect some drinks or wine from the person. No, you're saying fetch water. Water. That's what happens when you obey. That's what happens when you obey. Is to trust regardless. Abraham trusted God regardless, knowing that God was able to bring back Isaac to life even if he killed him. So trust regardless. The goal to obey is to trust regardless. And I told you, no one ever loses when they obey. It may seem like you are not winning immediately, but you always win eventually. So no one ever loses when he or she is obey. When he or she obey, no one ever loses. No one ever loses. You only lose when you don't obey. And you see, when you don't obey, it may seem like you are winning immediately, but you will lose ultimately when you don't obey. Gehazi went to pick up things from Naaman, which the instruction from Elisha was to not take anything from Naaman. So in the immediate, it felt like he was winning. He had gotten some gold, some wrappers, and went to hide them in his tent. He thought he was winning. But ultimately, he lost because he ended up with Naaman's leprosy. He ended up with Naaman's leprosy. When it comes to obey, you don't lose. That's why you can trust regardless, because you don't lose. You don't lose. 3 reasons it is hard to obey. 3 reasons that I found that it's hard to obey. Number 1, your sense. Your sense will always want to get in and say, no, if you think about it, your sense will stop you from obeying. Your sense will stop you from obeying. It doesn't make sense sacrificing a child you have waited for 25 years. That sense. Your sense will say, hold back, don't give, hold back. That sense. Your sense that made Saul say, okay, let me keep the best flocks to offer a sacrifice. Sense. The reason it's hard for people to obey is their sense. They are thinking it out. They are trying to reason it. They are trying to, does this make sense? You know, Gen Z will say, make it make sense. Make it make sense. See, to obey does not need to make sense. It doesn't need to make sense. Just obey. It doesn't need to make sense. Just obey. Make it make sense that Peter is walking on water. But he obeyed and he walked on water. It doesn't need to make sense. Just obey. So one of the things, the reason it's hard for people to obey is their sense. It's their sense. They want to put their sense into it. This thing doesn't, it doesn't add up. When it comes to obey, it doesn't need to add up. Just obey. When you obey, it adds up. When you obey, it adds up. Just obey. Just obey. The second reason why it's hard for people to obey, rationalization. They want to rationalize it. Okay, if you do this, you now do this. They want to rationalize it. Just obey. You cannot rationalize obedience. Just obey. So I was trying to rationalize to spare the best flocks to offer sacrifice. This rationalization, it will stop you from obeying. This was making it hard for you to obey. I'm trying to rationalize it. No! It's what's making it hard for you to obey. Rationalization. Your brain is too little to phantom God. So when God gives you an instruction, just obey. He's the one that sees the end from the beginning. You can't see that. He's the one that has time in his hand, your past, your present, and your future all before him. You can't see that. So why are you trying to rationalize to someone who can see that and know that, and you who doesn't even know your next minute? The third reason why it's hard for people to obey is what they are used to. Sometimes obedience makes you do what you are not used to. That's why it's unconventional. What you are not used to. What you're not used to. People are somehow stuck with what they are used to. They are in their comfort zone with what they are used to. So it becomes hard for them to obey because of what they are used to. These are the three reasons it is hard to obey. Number one, sense. Number two, rationalization. And number three, what you are used to. And you see, your greatest obstacle to obey is your thinking. Your thinking. How you are thinking would be the obstacle for you to obey. Think about it. You are just giving up your son, Ishmael. You let him go and his mother. The next thing God is saying, now give up Isaac. Offer him to me as a sacrifice. Genesis 21, Genesis 22, back to back. Somebody was thinking, we say, God, no, calm down, calm down. I'm giving you Ishmael. That's enough. I cannot give you Isaac. That's your thinking. That's your thinking. That becomes an obstacle for you to obey. Gehazi was thinking, why will I just let Naaman go with all these things? Let me go and meet him and collect some and hide it. That's your thinking. That's your thinking. He hid what he collected, but the leprosy became exposed to the whole world. That's a story for another day. Your obstacle to obey is your thinking. Your thinking. Instruction is not to think true. Instruction is to obey. I'll say that again. Instruction is not for you to think true. So when you receive an instruction, it's not for you to think true. It's for you to obey. That's why we say to obey is to comply with and to follow instruction, no questions asked. That's to obey. So instruction is not for you to think through, okay, he told me this, okay, let me think through it, okay, should I? No. Instruction is not to think through. Instruction is to obey. I told you earlier, the obstacle for you to obey is your thinking. You must know when your thinking has become a liability for you and when your thinking is an asset. When it comes to obey, your thinking is a liability. Just obey. At that point, your thinking is not an asset, it's a liability. Just obey. Just obey. I'll give you a rundown with the life of King Saul. 1 Samuel 13, 1 Samuel 15, 1 Samuel 28. Three things about Saul in these three chapters that showed us that Saul was a person who had a pattern to not obey. He had a pattern to not obey. So I'll give you the scripture so you can go and look it up yourself. Because of time, I'll not be able to read up all the whole story for you, but I'll explain it. In 1 Samuel 13, from verse 8 to 14, Saul had told Samuel to wait for 7 days and then he will come and then offer the sacrifice before they go for battle. Saul saw that the people were about to start leaving him and Samuel had not come. And then he took up the sacrifice himself and he offered it. which he was told not to. The moment he finished offering the sacrifice, Samuel showed up. And Samuel said, why have you done this foolish thing? And God had intended to establish your throne forever. But now he's going to find a replacement for you. First Samuel 15. God told Saul through Samuel to completely destroy the Amalekites. Because while they were coming out of children of Israel were coming out of Egypt, the Amalekites were the people who were hostile to them. So God was giving them payback. So that's why I tell people, God knows how to pay back. Don't try God. That's why in this year of 2025, you are sandwiched in between the peace of God and the God of peace. Hey, I'm going to explain that another time. You are sandwiched between the peace of God and the God of peace. In 1 Samuel 15, God told Samuel to tell Saul to completely destroy the Amalekites. Man, woman, beast, children, everything completely, utterly destroy. That's the word. Utterly destroy. Saul went, killed the people, spared the king, kept the best flock. And then God told Samuel that, it pained me that I made Saul king. God regretted making Saul king. Samuel said, oh my word, what is this? Samuel went to him and said, what is this that you have done? And Saul said, oh, the people said, the people. I hope one day I can have the time to teach us about the people. That will just be the topic, the people. Please remind me. Teach about the people. Just note that down, the people. Because there are a lot of things that people make, mistakes that people make in life, that is tied to the people. The people. That conversation, we'll have it someday. Right? The people. I just want to note it down so I remember. So, Saul said the people were leaving. So I got, the people told me to keep the best flock. The people. And Samuel told him something very striking. He says to obey is better than sacrifice. And to hearken is better than the fat of ram. Right? And then 1 Samuel 28, verse 8 to 19. Saul was about to go to battle, and then he went to consult the witch of Endor. And Saul had already made the decree that no one should consult sorcerers and soothsayers anymore. He himself went against that. And he asked the witch of Endor to bring back the spirit of Samuel so he can consult. Samuel said, see, this is your last. This is your last. You're going to die in this battle, and your son too will die in this battle. You see, Saul is a case study of what it can cost you when you don't obey. He lost his throne, he lost his lineage, he lost his son the same day in battle. When you don't obey, the consequences are grievous when you don't obey. They are grievous. Saul had a pattern to disobey. 1 Samuel 15, 1 Samuel 13, 1 Samuel 15, 1 Samuel 28. I said it all the time. Once is a mistake, twice is a choice, thrice is a pattern. Saul had a pattern to not obey. He had a pattern to not obey. I hope you learn from that so you don't become like Saul. Okay, let's see a few things as we begin to tie this up. let's say a few things as we begin to tie this up. Right? When you don't obey, your options become rebellion and stubbornness. And you see that with the case of Saul, 1 Samuel 15. When you don't obey, you become rebellious, you become stubborn. What a loss. What a loss. David would never have been king if only Saul had obeyed. That's just it. David would never have been king. Read in 1 Samuel 13. Samuel had told him that God had intended to establish your throne forever, which means David would never have been king. Samuel told him, when you were little in your own sight, in your father's house, God made you king. He had planned to establish your throne forever. But God just couldn't put up with Saul's excesses of back-to-back disobedience. See, you have nothing to lose when you obey, but you have everything to lose when you don't. Saul lost everything. So it's a case study of you will lose everything when you don't obey. You lose everything. He lost everything. He lost his throne. He lost his dynasty and his lineage to the throne. He lost his son. He lost everything. You have nothing to lose when you obey, but you have everything to lose when you don't. You have everything to lose. Genesis 21, Genesis 22, Abraham, another case study of how to obey. We've seen Saul as a case study who did not obey. Now let's look at the case study of one who obeyed. Genesis 21, God told Abraham, send Hagar away, send her son, Ishmael, away. He did. Genesis 22, God said, okay, bring your son, Isaac, your only son, the one whom you love, let's go and offer him as a sacrifice. He obeyed. He obeyed. He didn't hold back. See, if you are thinking of what you would lose, you will never obey. Abraham wasn't thinking of what he would lose. He just obeyed. And then God said, by this I know. In blessings I will bless you. In multiplication I will multiply you. By this I know. If you are thinking of what you will lose, you will never obey. You never obey. You never obey. When it comes to obey, you must suspend thinking. I told you, the obstacle to people to obey is their thinking. So when it comes to obey, suspend your thinking. Because your thinking will want to make you rationalize. Will want to make you say, no, you can't do this, it's too hard. It's your thinking. So when it comes to obey, suspend thinking. Imagine Abraham was thinking, hey, how will I go and sacrifice Isaac now? I just let Hagar and Ishmael go. Now I'm going to sacrifice Isaac. I'm going to lose 2 ways. If you are thinking, you will not obey. If you are thinking, you will not obey. When it comes to obey, you must suspend thinking. Because thinking can lead you to doubt. See, how's that possible? Remember the man called Zachariah in Luke chapter 1? Yes, the husband to Elizabeth. He was a priest. He was offering sacrifice to the Lord in the temple. So he understood that, yes, there's a God and God can work wonders and miracles. But when the angel came to him and told him that you have a son, Zachariah said, how will this be? I'm of old age. My wife also old. And the angel says, see, I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. For what you have said now, you'll be dumb until the child is born. The angel went again to Mary. Same angel went to Mary. Same Luke chapter 1. And told Mary, hey Mary, thou highly favored. I said, you are going to have a son. His name will be Jesus. He's going to save the world and save people from their sins. Mary said, how can these things be, since I know not a man? Mary's question was not of doubt, because she said, be it unto me according to your word. It wasn't of doubt. Zechariah's question was of doubt. You see it in Luke chapter 1 verse 38, she said, be it unto me according to your word. Mary obeyed the instruction. And you see, the surest path to tread when it comes to obey is to do. The path to tread that is for sure when it comes to obedience is to do what you have been told to do. To do. That's why we said 2 traits of obey is do it and do it now. The one that Jesus said, lo, I have come to do your will, O God, in the volume of books written of me. See, John chapter 2 verse 5, Mary told the servant, whatsoever he tells you to do, do it. The surest path to tread when it comes to obey is to do. That's the surest path to tread, to do. Whatever it tells you to do, do it. It's to do. That's the surest path to tread. And to obey is time sensitive. The opportunity will not be there forever. Time sensitive. Do it now. I told us when we talked about instruction the other time, Elisha was given the instruction to leave the brook chariot when it was dried up to go to Zarephath. Imagine if Elisha said, I will stay, I'm Elijah, I will stay, I will not go, I will stay. The brook will come back to be flowing again. He would have died of thirst. And the ravens would have stopped bringing him flesh. He would have died. He would have died. Why? Because to obey is time sensitive. Guess what? The moment Elijah got to Zarephath, that was when the widow had just come out to pick sticks to make her meal. Same moment, same timing. That is not coincidence. That's not coincidence. How would Elijah have been able to know that particular widow in Zarephath if she had not come out at that time when she came out? So to obey is time sensitive. The opportunity will not be there forever. Make the most of the timing and obey. What God has told you to do in January, you can't go and start doing it in March. It's time sensitive for January, so do it in January. Do it in January. To obey is time sensitive, guys. It is time sensitive. What has God told you to do in 2025? What has God told you to do in 2025? Will you obey? Will you obey it? See, 2025 will come and go. The difference will be how you obey. That's the truth. The difference will be how you obey. 2025 will come and it will go. The difference will be how you obey. That will be the difference. That will be the difference. So to stay ahead in 2025, you need 2 things. 1, get instruction. 2, obey the instruction. As simple as that. QED, end of story. To stay ahead in 2025, those 2 things are what you need. 1, get your instruction for the year. 2, obey the instruction for the year. That's all. That's why we talked about instruction last Sunday, and we're talking about obey this Sunday. So if I were you, I would watch both of them side by side. I'll finish this on instruction, then I'll watch this on obey. So I can really understand what I need to do in my 2025. Because the only thing that will be different for you in 2025 is the instruction you have for the year for yourself and how you obey that instruction for yourself. That will make the difference for you in 2025. Nothing else. Nothing else. And I told you earlier, instruction is of no effect when you don't obey. Instruction is of no effect. No, Jesus said that they had made the word of God of no effect by their tradition. Instruction is of no effect when you don't obey. Instruction may be amazing, may be beautiful, may be great, may be phenomenal, but when you don't obey, it's of no effect. It's of no effect when you don't obey. See, you either obey God or you obey your flesh. You obey your desires. You obey the pressure that comes your way. You are obeying something. Either you're obeying God or you're obeying yourself. You're not neutral to obey. You're not neutral. You're either obeying God or you're obeying yourself. You see, when you give in to temptation, you are obeying your flesh. You're obeying your flesh when you give in to temptation. You're obeying your flesh. You're obeying yourself when you give in to temptation. Remember, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. When you give in, you're obeying your flesh. In Isaiah 1:19, scripture says, if you are willing and obedient, you would eat the good of the land. If you are willing and obedient. Those two go hand in glove. You must be willing, you must be obedient. And to obey is a choice. And for every choice, you always have option. That's why it's a choice. You have an option. Either to obey or not to obey. You have an option. A choice is not a choice if you don't have an option. So to obey is a choice. And you always have option for every choice. Eve chose the option of her flesh. She saw that the fruit was pleasant to the eye, was desirous to make one wise. Genesis chapter 3. That was her flesh. That was her flesh. That was what she obeyed. And then she ate. And then she gave her husband Adam to also eat. And suddenly their eyes were open and they found out that they were naked. There are blessings when you obey. You see that in Deuteronomy 28, verse 2. It says, and all these blessings will come upon you when you obey. All these blessings. In Deuteronomy 28 is the chapter of blessings and also curses. And it says all these blessings will come upon you when you obey. When you obey. There are blessings when you obey. And there are also curses when you don't obey. See, the hardest thing to do is to obey. And the easiest way to live is to obey. I'll say that again. The hardest thing to do is to obey. And the easiest way to live is to obey. There's no substitute to obey. You either obey or you don't. And like I told you, half obedience is full disobedience. Guys, this is it. This is the first conversation for the year 2025. And what a way to start the year, to obey. You know the instruction that you have been given. I encourage you to obey. You don't lose when you obey. It's always to your benefit when you obey. Like I said, the hardest thing in life is to obey. And the easiest way to live your life is to obey. What a way to live your life. And you see these guys, Like I always tell you, 3 things will happen for you in this new week. 3 things will happen for you in this new week. Number one, increased voice of God. Number two, open heavens over your life. And number three, more angelic activities in all that you do. Remember, there's always more on the upgrade side of life. And that's why we encourage you to leave good behind so that you can upgrade. And what better way for you to upgrade in a new year, 2025, where your big things era is activated? What better way to upgrade than to obey? So, guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless you.